There are a lot of people who come here and struggle because they cannot get rid of the designation they had in India. They're like, oh, I was a general manager of an IT company. I would not do any other work other than that. So they have to understand it's a whole new country, it's a whole new culture. They have to understand. Sometimes it is frustrating. A cert 3 or 4 is much more valued than a PhD. Sometimes it is really frustrating. I understand. But that's part of the culture. Like I said, you have to be a Roman in Rome. So you have to integrate with the culture, get your foot in the door, prove your worth, and then move up the ladder. I always believed in that.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of More Clients, Less Effort. I almost forgot the name of my podcast there, Priya. Today, I am excited to be joined by Priya Jaganathan. Dr. Priya Jaganathan. We were just talking about the years you spent at university to get those 2 extra letters. Dr. Priya is a renowned business mentor with extensive experience in leveraging her Power Pivot program for the launching, marketing, and sales of digital products. As the founder of Pivot to Thrive, she has helped numerous businesses value their existing services and products and help them scale. Priya is known for her no BS practical approach and has carved a unique path in business mentoring by focusing on action rather than mere advice with the help of her offshore VA team, which we're going to talk about a lot. Priya, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Tim. I'm so glad to be here today.
Now, we were just having a little bit of a chat off air about the expectations upon certain cultural groups like Chinese and Indian, and you were expected to be a doctor or an engineer by your parents.
Yes, I was baptized to be a doctor. I think I hated it, but I just went with it. But I did not get the cutoff marks for MBBS. So I did my bachelor's in microbiology, master's in bioinformatics, and I got a job as university lecturer, in a very, very well-established university in Chennai. That's the only job I did in India for 9 years. But during that time, I still had that lack that I haven't really, fulfilled my parents' wishes. So I didn't want to do a traditional MSc, MPhil, PhD. That's where I'm special. So I went to did another MTech, Master of Technology in Biotechnology, and then I did my PhD. So I wanted to be an engineering PhD. So there I go. The prime time of my life, spent to get that 2 years, 2 letters.
It's like all of the acronyms thrown in there. But if you're an academic, you would understand every single one of them. And the rest of us who didn't quite enter the school system, like, what? What did you just say? Why do you think we have these cultural? I mean, it's very strong in Indian culture as it is in Chinese culture as well, that the expectations of our parents is that we go and fit into these buckets that they've predetermined for us. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because they don't live for themselves, they live for others. So every action that you do, like the person you marry, is not really a fit. They don't see the fit for that individual. They see the fit for the family. They see the fit to show off that they are, in-laws. So it's got a lot to do with how they want to project themselves rather than actually reflecting whether it's a good fit for them. So I might not be an engineering person, but I would be pushed into engineering. You won't believe the millions of Indians who do engineering and then go do MBA because their parents wanted them to. There's absolutely no correlation between the two, but they just do it because their parents want them to have a BE or a BTech and then have an MBA in their marriage invitation. For boys, it actually raises their value that they can demand as dowry. So that's a massive contributing factor as well. And for girls, it's just to increase the value to say that my daughter is equally qualified as your boy. So there is a piece of negotiation for the number of gold and cash transactions there. So that could also be a huge factor.
Become almost a product.
Exactly.
You're a product for the family to sell off at some point.
Yes, it's sad. It's very sad. I don't know. Right from my teenage, I decided I'm never going to have an arranged marriage. That was something in my head all along. Like just because a guy ties a thread, because we don't have rings in India, we tie an yellow thread, which is considered to be sacred. I don't wear my marriage chain anymore. But, just because a guy ties a thread, it doesn't mean I have to go and spend the night with him. You know what I mean? So that was kind of my understanding of how arranged marriage worked, which was pretty successful all along.
How do you think that affects people from India who are now kind of adopting other cultures. We know a lot of people outside of India sort of migrate. We see a lot of people in the UK, in Europe, South Africa, US, Australia as well, where we are now. How do you think that really affects people when they move into those other cultures?
I think every migrant goes through what is known as the identity crisis, because I had my own fair share of identity crisis. You struggle to draw a line on how much Australian you should be and how much Indian you should be. So culturally, we don't eat beef or pork, but I let my kids enjoy a bunning sausage.
Yep.
I have Christmas tree at home. I do some Easter egg hunts because I want my kids to feel belonged. But there's always a fine line that separates it. So I believe every first generation migrant, I think after that there's no struggle. You're not Indian anymore, you're more Australian, or wherever you are migrated, you're settled. My
Yep.
kids will not have the struggle that I have. But I think first generation migrants always struggle to draw the line on how much they have to adapt the beliefs that they were born and raised with, and how much they have to adapt to the country you're in, because you have to be a Rome, that's it.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the struggle for every migrant would be.
What was the biggest challenge for you coming to Australia as an adult?
Yes.
What was the biggest challenge for you as you came across?
My biggest challenge was everybody associating Indian with curry. The first word they would talk is, oh, I love curries. You're from India, I love curries. And I'm like, Indians are much more than curries. It is funny and it's a good conversation starter, but after a period of time, it becomes more judgmental and sometimes offensive, because you're just being associated with one thing. Like if you go and say, I'm an Australian, nobody says, oh, kangaroo. I don't know if you get that. I don't know. But being judged for that one thing was something that I really struggled. And I tell, oh, India has a lot more to offer than just curry. In fact, Indians don't eat naan and butter chicken. It is not a staple food in India. No
I think
one
it's,
eats
isn't
that in
isn't
India.
butter chicken an invention
English,
of
yes.
the
UK,
English?
correct. But then they just call it an Indian thing. That's what I tell people.
Yeah.
Nobody eats butter chicken and naan in India.
Okay.
It's very
Well,
strange.
it's such a big country, really. I think people forget how big India is and how many cultural influences that are in India. That, from a cuisine perspective, a lot of India does have a very strong cuisine culture that has sort of now traveled the world that are maybe associated with that. I'm curious to know when, you sort of came to Australia, you've got this sort of technology, biotech sort of background. What was it about business that first attracted you to go, I don't feel, I need to change something. Something's not right. What was it about that you first discovered?
So my very first job in Australia was with Bet365, the betting company.
Yeah.
So I had a very interesting integration into the Australian culture, I must say, with Australian punters. That too, I worked in Darwin because Northern Territory sponsored my visa.
Yeah.
So when I started working, I understood there is a dollar value for every hour of my time. Whereas in India, we get paid per month.
Yeah.
So there's no value for time. But once after I came here, I was like, okay, this is the value of my time. So I'm going to try and maximize how much money I can make. Because as a migrant, for you, you just want to make every day count. Because I had left my kids, my husband and I moved first. So every day away from my children, I wanted to make it count. So I was just in a beast mode, trying to work. So I was working full time, and then I was side hustling as a tutor. So I used to tutor high school children and university graduates for GAMSAT exams and other things. So I understood time equals money. So that was my first biggest lesson in Australia. Time equals money, which is not a scenario back in India. There's also an interesting perspective to it. There's only so much time in the day. So it came to a point where, how do I make money even if I'm sick? If I'm sick, if I don't go to work, I don't get paid. If I'm sick, I don't tutor, I don't get paid. So there's always this exchange for time for money. So how do I not trade time for money and make money was my biggest question. And I attended one event in Darwin. That was the first time they did a startup innovation expo. And I met some amazing mentors, and they introduced me to the online world of Grant Cardone and Ty Lopez and everyone else. So that's how I got into that world. I got super interested in the online world. And I think I'm ADHD undiagnosed. I just needed, those different aspects of online business to keep me interested. All I needed was 2 hours before work and 2 hours after work invested in learning about different things and trying different things. And that's how I got into the online business world. And my famous quote was, use your 9 to 5 to pay your bills and 6 to 10 to build your empire.
Yeah, I like that. I do love, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, you can see Priya's little sort of model there with a great big light bulb moment right in the middle going,
Yeah.
I can change my world just by doing this sort of slightly different model. And I think that's a really interesting thing you say about, you kind of, when you see something that you go, wow, this really makes sense to me, it almost becomes this natural fit, which I can tell for you wasn't your engineering, wasn't your doctorate, wasn't that technology biotech sort of space that you were sort of forced into almost to keep your parents happy, that you suddenly go, hey, I've been doing this thing wrong my entire life. And I finally found something that really resonates with me and how my brain operates.
I think Australian culture plays an important role in people adapting and accepting you to change. In India, if you have even a maternity break, it's very hard to restart your career. If you go off track, your life is done, doomed
Yep.
forever. It's very hard to get back. So here, I was working in a call center, and then I worked with University of Adelaide in the research grant management. I did the same job in University of Queensland. So Australians really understand and accept the fact that you've got transferable skills from those jobs. If it's a call center, you've got customer service experience. You have the experience in handling difficult conversations, conflict resolution. So all these fancy words on a resume did make sense to me after I moved to Australia, because they do accept it as a transferable skill. I don't think if I was in India as a university lecturer for 9 or 10 years, could have done anything else other than that. I would have retired in a university.
Is that something that's quite, embedded into Indian culture, that people sort of do one job for life?
Correct.
Certainly in
Might have
Australia,
the same job for
certainly
38
in Australia,
years.
and I think in the US as well, it was a one job for life thing. Like my grandparents, they were the one job for life kind of people. And even my parents, I would think, didn't change jobs as often. My mum was a teacher her entire life. And even after she retired, she kept kind of teaching as well. There is a thing, I think, certainly younger people, I look at number of occupations that some of my staff have been through and my kids starting to get into. We're seeing people kind of do these 2 or 3 year, almost like gig economy sort of stuff. And culturally, that's a big change as well, right? So we've got these sort of cultural things that we sort of play into, as well as from where we came from. But sometimes that doesn't quite fit either who we are or what we are in terms of contemporary culture and opportunity. I'm certainly seeing a lot more people sort of move into a gig economy, right? Where you might actually have 2 or 3 jobs where you have a skill set that you apply to several different jobs. So you have a skill career path, but not necessarily a job career path that might be quite different.
Definitely, I agree with you. And I feel more belonged here because of that reason. I can do whatever I want. I started with social media agency. I pivoted different things, but still people trusted me because it was me who was doing it. It was more of a personal brand back then. Even now it's Priya's company, so people do business because they know, like, and trust me. So I think that's a huge factor. And I do believe it's good to have options. I said in life, I never believed I have options. I met my husband, like married him. So I didn't know life had options. That's a classic example.
Is that something you talk about as options? Is that something you see people migrating to Australia from India now still struggle with, whether they're male or female or other?
It really depends on them. There are a lot of people who come here and struggle because they cannot get rid of the designation they had in India. They're like, oh, I was a general manager of an IT company. I would not do any other work other than that. So they have to understand it's a whole new country. It's a whole new culture. They have to understand. Sometimes it is frustrating. A Cert 3 or 4 is much more valued than a PhD. Sometimes it is really frustrating. I understand. But that's part of the culture. Like I said, you have to be a Roman in Rome. So you have to integrate with the culture, get your foot in the door, prove your worth, and then move up the ladder. I always believed in that. So people who kind of have the attitude similar to mine, that, I was okay working in a call center as long as it paid my bills. I needed to get my bills sorted first and then find my way into the Australian university. That's what I did. So some people are so rigid that they don't want to do anything other than their core industry. They don't want to deviate from their core industry. And I think they find it a little bit challenging to get their first job or to stabilize their family.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for flexibility and adaptability, isn't there?
Correct.
Right, to ultimately get where you go. If you keep banging on the door and door is closed, but the window right next to it is open, just climb through the window if you need to.
Yeah.
What was the biggest learning for you as you got started in your business?
My biggest learning, I mean, today as we speak, and it's very relevant to your podcast and theme, is lack of systems. I was this girl with spreadsheets. Spreadsheets. I mean, I still use a lot of spreadsheets because I think it's easier to share with my team and I still use it a lot. But I was literally burnt out late last year because I didn't have systems in place. It was me, especially having a team. I have trained 33. I have a functional team of 19 at the moment. And, it's 19 different personalities dealing with different time zones. They have their own issues and also training them, pairing them with the right fit with the clients. So there's a lot of work that goes into it, but I do not have systems in place to filter them and to run them through a pipeline and make it a seamless process. So definitely lack of systems in my operations, especially managing my team, has been a massive struggle.
Yeah. How's that impacted your growth? I mean, for a lot of people, sort of that smaller micro sort of space, we go, oh my God, 19 people. That's a lot. When I talk to a lot of Indian or companies based out of India, it's like, oh, I've got 120 staff. I'm like, really? That's quite substantial. It seems to be quite common, I think. And I know they're not all full-time, are they?
No, they're not full-time. They're project-based.
They're project-based, as we talked about just before. What's the biggest lesson you could share with people about building an offshore team, and particularly around that systemization aspect?
So having a project manager or a team leader to manage them in their own time zones and being available for them is crucial, bringing that into picture as we speak, because I was their point of contact. I was the only point of contact. So everything they wanted to speak to me, and the time difference makes it even more challenging. And, and they don't get the support they need. And they need that motivation because they're not full time. They don't have a salary to plan their monthly expenses. So obviously they're dependent on getting more projects. So they need me all the time. So I think that's the first thing you'll have to address is have a person just to manage them, train them, motivate them, because it's really hard. Like I said, I've got 50% retention. Imagine if I had 33 functional team. Now I wouldn't be traveling to India to recruit more. So I think retention is key, and retaining your staff is challenging because they need so much motivation. They need rewards. They need recognition for their work. They need to see a career growth pathway. So I failed to show them a career growth pathway. So these are the lessons that I've learned along the way, that I need to have a person to manage them, to motivate them, to give them all the support they need in their time zones, who has to be approachable and support them, help them with all the trainings, and also, make sure they feel seen and heard because I'm busy here. I think that's the main thing that we lack. I have a very, very good culture in my team, and that's all driven by me. And that's where it becomes more challenging.
I think that's one of the things we can lose sight of, isn't it? We just look at our team as people who do stuff for us and do stuff for our clients, but we forget to put ourselves in their shoes often enough to say, well, if I was one of my team members and I was working for a company, right, called Pivot to Thrive or Win More Clients, what would I want as an employee? I'd want to see a career path. I'd want to see some safety and security. I'd want to see some recognition for the work that we do well, and an opportunity to learn from the things that we don't do well. And more often than not, I don't think we put that in to our management style often enough. We don't put ourselves in the position of our employees to go, well, what would I want if I was an employee of my company?
Yeah, I think we've struggled to empathize with all the 100 other things we do, and we have got in our head. So I think it was a good learning. And the earlier, the better. I got to understand that this is the challenge as we grow, because I've got a target of 100 as my team size by July. So I'm traveling to India in June. to attend BNI India conference. So I think that'll be an easy way for me to generate leads instead of tapping into individual women organizations, because I'm heavily focused on empowering women more from multicultural backgrounds, Indian, background, to become financially independent. So for me, I thought that'd be the easier way to tap into different networks. So yeah, so I'm trying to learn from my mistakes, work on it as we speak, and then grow my team so they've got all the systems and support when they get onboarded.
I want to throw this question at you because you did sort of touch on it very briefly there about as the team grows, you can't be the person who manages it. You have to have someone locally, if it's an offshore person, or even within your own team if you're sort of recruiting in country. What do you think the practical size of relationships from a team management perspective is that you can manage?
I would say 10 to 1
Mm-hmm.
is a pretty okay. From an Indian perspective, I would say 10 to 1 is practically possible, and they would get all the support they need,
Yep.
provided the person managing the team is not completely overloaded with other tasks to do as well.
So that's
So
their own responsibility, is manage those 10 people. It's not manage those 10 people and do other work.
yeah, yeah. So I would definitely say 10 to 1 is a good way to manage their projects, their workload, their availability, their mental health, overall perspective. Because I have lots of mums, young mums in my group, and we do get children to our training calls, and we're pretty happy with it. So I
Yep.
really want them to have that culture that, having a kid is not a barrier to be employed or be self-sufficient.
Yeah. Tell me about a system that you use in your business to
So
attract, convert, or keep clients.
So different kinds of systems. So the first one, I believe, in my Power Pivot is the very first step that we do when we onboard clients. So this is basically a set of questions on a form that'll help me understand where they are right now, where they want to go in the next 90 days. I don't believe in long-term 5-year plans. I'm more of what can we achieve in the next 90 days. So on an average, clients work with me 6 months. So I tend to break it into 90-day goals. So once we smash that, then we can go to the growth or scale cycle. So this will help me. The Power Pivot basically stands for product and pricing, basically auditing the product suites they have, the pricing tiers they've got, and then the online and offline presence, whether the messaging is right, online and offline, and then whether they've got a lead generation pipeline in place, whether they've got a sales process in place. And the last one, retargeting, is where a lot of people leave tens of thousands of dollars. They do not go back to their past clients or current clients and give them an upsell that'll help them to move from B to C. You've helped them to move from A to B. Now, different level is different, challenges. So do you have another offer that'll help them to scale from B to C? So retargeting existing clients or creating retainer packages like monthly subscriptions. So this has really, really worked well for me, because the first call when I onboard, they have to complete this form before I get on a roadmap call. So I look at the form, understand what they need, then get on a roadmap call and tell them, okay, these are the gaps and these are the options for you to actually fill those gaps and get the desired outcome, what you want. So that's the very first system, a simple Google form that I'm trying to move to a more AI oriented form as my team is working on it.
Let's drill into that in a bit more detail, because we haven't
Yes.
really explored the idea of onboarding forms on any of the podcasts we've run so far. What are some of the unusual questions that you ask on that form, other than, where are you, where do you want to be, name, address, phone number, those sorts of things? What are some of the unusual questions that you find super effective that people wouldn't expect to be on that form?
So really, so they have never had a chance. That's what most of my clients tell me. They've never had a chance to answer these questions. So it makes them think. Some people take 3 days to complete the form. They're like, oh, it made me think so much, about the upsells and cross sells. What is your current pricing? And there's an interesting question. It'll be like, what if I ask you to increase like your prices 3 times today? What are your thoughts around it? So that'll help me to really identify if they've got money objections, whether they've got issues with pricing, whether they will believe, oh, no one will pay me if I charge $100, if I charge 300, no one will pay me. It's not that no one pays you, right? So there's a bit of coaching required to help them articulate it's about the value and it's really not about the price. So those are different types of questions in each of these ladders. So a lot of them don't even know that what is a lead. How do I capture leads? So everyone has a website, right? So what do you do if someone lands on the website? What is the action that you want them to take? Do you have any targeted outcome to capture those leads? Do you have any ways that you're using to nurture your leads? Do you have Facebook group to nurture? Do you have WhatsApp group to nurture? Do you do email marketing? So every step that I've got in my Power Pivot has different questions that'll go through them. So sales processes. There's one retreat client who had a beautiful retreat website, but they had the pricing, but there was no payment processor linked. And if someone wanted to join the retreat, it would take to the Calendly page. And I was like, why? If I like what I see, I should be given the option to just buy the retreat ticket. Why should I speak to you?
Mm.
Why are you forcing me to speak to you before I make a decision when you've got everything on the website? You know what I mean? So a lot of people who struggle to either put their pricing there directly or have a payment processor linked to sell directly. So I do a lot of education around general website landing pages and sales funnels because I'm a proud alumni of ClickFunnels University. So I'm a big believer of that. So yeah.
Well, I think you're absolutely right with that, though. You know, if we're looking at people's sort of process around how they attract customers, they're generally going to have one of three things, right? A bit like driving to the traffic lights, right? You're going to have people who want to keep going. You're going to have people who want to pause and see if they need more information. You'll have people who don't want to go ahead right now. Okay, it's not all potentially ever, but definitely right now. And we almost need to give people options for all of those three things when they come through our process. I want to bring us back to the sort of onboarding form. Is that a manual process for you, or is it like payment link automatically sent to customer? Please fill out this form.
No, it's automatically done. At the end of the payment, the thank you page and the checkout, they get an email sent saying, please complete the onboarding form and then book a call using this booking link. So it's all automated.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really important, right? If it's the same thing that's happening over and over and over again,
automate it.
Automate it.
That's
right?
it.
Either get rid of it altogether, which in this case is probably not a good idea, right? Systemize it. And it could be a manual process where someone on the team sends that thing to make sure it happens, or it can be a completely automated process. I really love that. How do you use that information? Is it you just use it for your onboarding call, or is it used elsewhere in your process as well?
So it helps me understand. I've got a question. Why did you choose me? Why did you choose to work with me? So that also gives me an indication of what are the factors that really drives people to work with me. So they give me information like, oh, you spoke about this, and that's what made me believe that you are the right fit for my requirement at the moment. Or, I believe in you, or I've seen your journey for the past 12 months. So there's been a client who has watched my journey for 18 months in my BNI. And then he goes, now I was like, she's the one. So I gave him a 6-month option and he chose a 12-month option to work with me. He said, I want to work with you for the next 1 year.
Yeah, awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Let's look to wrap up here. And these are a couple of questions I like to ask with every podcast. But let's go with this one. What was your favorite subject in school?
Favorite subject was biology. Are you surprised?
Yeah, natural transition there. How did you meet your spouse?
I met him on Orkut. I don't know if it was a thing in Australia. It was a big social media platform back then in the 2008-ish, before Facebook was a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. How would your parents describe what you do now?
My dad stopped talking to me when I quit my university job. I know you're not surprised.
The shame.
Yes. My brother in UK, who's more British than Indian because he's been there for 23 years, stopped talking to me when I joined a call center. He was like, only druggies work in a call center in the UK. And it was a UK-based call center, ironically. So it just shows their level of ignorance or their level of acceptance, to be honest. But now when I share my progress, when I share my growth, they're really proud of what I do. And they know they absolutely have no choice because I'm going to do what I want to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. What does your end of day routine look like?
Entire day?
Yeah, the end. What is your end of day routine?
Oh, end of day routine. Oh, these days I have a very exciting bedtime routine. After the chat GPT has introduced all the multimodal input, I take my phone, I talk into my phone, chat GPT, whatever I want to do that day. And then I've got my laptop on and it gives me all the output. I'm like, no, that's not what I meant. You got this all wrong. So I mean, I do a lot of workshop about AI in marketing, and I say this is literally my bedtime routine: is talking to ChatGPT on the phone because I'm so tired. I don't want to type anything.
I love it. Love it. What's the challenge you're facing in your business right now, and how are you tackling that?
So attracting and retaining good quality VAs is the biggest challenge I'm facing at the moment.
Yep.
So one thing I'm doing is going to India, because I don't know how India operates now. It's been 9 years, so I'm more foreign to India. So that's why I'm like, I'm just going to go there, understand how everything works, and I'm going to really, really get quality leads for my VA team.
Yeah, awesome. What do you think the keys to building a great team?
I think empathy and support, major systems. Systems is the key.
Yeah.
But first, let's humanize them with all the empathy and support they need, and provide them with all the systems they need 24/7, with you, without you. They get everything what they need.
Yeah, I must admit, I've just been playing with some stuff in ClickUp in my business, where literally as a client pays, the entire project, onboarding, offboarding, deliverables, everything is all rolled out directly in ClickUp off the back of a systemization. And I've been going through every single task to record little Loom videos on how to actually do that as well.
Yeah.
Right. So this is how you add the team to the Slack channel. This is, how we file the onboarding form, into the Google Drive, etc. Right. This is
We're
how
moving to go high level now.
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
good. Very good. What's your motto?
My motto is to empower women with financial independence. As much as people say money is not everything, I strongly believe money definitely positions you in a better place to face any curveballs that life throws at you. So my motto is to empower women with financial independence.
Yeah. I love how like every challenge in your life, you've actually created an opportunity out of it, Priya. So really appreciate you joining us on the call today. Guys, if you want to know more about Priya and the work she does, you can head on over to Pivot to Thrive, PIVOT, number 2, THRIVE.com.au. There's a whole bunch of links and resources over there. You can find a little bit more about Priya's Pivot to Thrive process and her Power Pivot process. And I know that there's a lot of listeners on the call that you'll be able to help, Priya. So I really appreciate sharing your advice and insights today.
Thank you so much for having me, Tim. I thoroughly enjoyed. I don't think I've done a podcast just about systems. So this is super exciting when I actually understand and appreciate the value of systems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Couldn't have got done at the right time.
Guys, thanks again for joining us on the call today. If you enjoyed today's episode and feel you got some value, we'd love to have you give us a review, share, and like the podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And we'll see you again real soon.